You can now understand why I have not been on camera. I have bad eyes. No, we will discuss it later. Our lesson is titled, A Lazy or a Profitable Steward. In our Gospel today, Luke 16, 1 through 13, there is, of course, an alternate Gospel. You can do Luke 16, 10 through 13. But then you don't get any of the marvelous set up to those last three lines. You don't hear him talking to the debtors. You don't hear from the boss. You don't get the meat of the story. Whenever there are alternate Gospels, I will put stars so you can see the beginning and the end. If I don't have it listed, I never, ever read the alternates. In this one, the steward is called an agent of the property and has added his own service fee, if you will, onto each invoice. But this was expected of him. In this time, this was the proper and expected mean of business, that the agents would commonly set a usurious rate of lending, with the agents of each property or business negotiating between themselves a rate that was high, but high enough to be agreeable, but low enough that each would take a profit. And rates of 20% per month were not uncommon. That is a usurious rate. 20% per month is over 400% per year. These are not unlike the payday loans of today, where it's 12% per week. And all of the advertising you see and all of the banners you see on their storefront or across the street right in front of their store will list only 5% per week. You will never, ever see what their annual rate is, except for on the documents you must sign. Many of these are illegal in their own state because usury is illegal. And between the 27 states that allow them, the current rate, annual interest rate, AIR, is 354%. And yes, this is in the United States. In the United Kingdom, the annual interest rate on what would go for as a payday loan is 473% in those areas where they're found. The dishonesty of the steward consisted in the squandering of his master's property and not in any subsequent graft. The master commended the dishonest steward who had foregone his own usurious commission on the business transactions by having the debtors write new notes that reflected only the real amount owed the master. In other words, he had the debtors take off his profit on those invoices. So the olive oil debtor owed exactly how much the value of the shipment was. He had 50 barrels of olive oil that he owed, and he was shipping 50 barrels of olive oil as well. That is beyond the measure of usury. But we don't know if that 50 was also including previous shipments. The dishonest steward acts in this way in order to ingratiate himself with the debtors, because he knows he is being dismissed from his current position. By taking and leaving go of his own profit, these other businessmen say, "Oh, well, look at how much of a cut he's taking from us. Well, is this someone we can use in our organization or not?" The parable then teaches the prudent use of one's material goods in light of an imminent crisis. 3 conclusions. Conclusion 1. For the children of this world are more prudent in dealing with their own generation than are the children of light. I tell you, make friends for yourselves with dishonest wealth, so that when it fails, you will be welcomed into eternal dwellings. This conclusion recommends the prudent use of one's wealth in light of the coming end of the world, after the manner of the children of this world, represented in the parable of the dishonest steward. Dishonest wealth in this setting is literally translated as mammon of iniquity, and means that it is the wealth itself that leads one toward dishonesty, not that they were dishonest to begin with. Eternal dwellings means heaven. Conclusion number 2. The person who is trustworthy in very small matters is also trustworthy in great ones. The person who is dishonest in very small matters is also dishonest in great ones. This conclusion recommends constant fidelity to those in positions of responsibility. Conclusion number 3. No servant can serve 2 masters. He will either hate one and love the other, or be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon. This conclusion is a general statement about the incompatibility of serving God and being a slave to riches. To be dependent upon wealth is opposed to the teachings of Jesus, who counseled complete dependence on the Father as one of the characteristics of a Christian disciple. God and mammon. In this situation and in this sentence, mammon is used as if it were itself a god. Jesus notes that wealth has its place, to be used to assist those who are less well off, to feed, clothe, house, and take care of the poor. But to be rich for the sake of being rich is a sin. To pretend to be a preacher while living in the most ostentatious, luxurious wealth, while others are dying in poverty. For one doesn't live in poverty, but one merely exists in poverty, and then one dies. This is a most grievous sin. I am not going to say the list, but only the worst offenders, so you too can pray that they be struck down, stripped of their wealth, and have it given to those suffering the most in their poverty. Joel Osteen of Houston, Texas. Kenneth Copeland of every state that doesn't have a warrant out for him. Jesse Duplantis, Illinois. And Creflo Dollar also has more than 20 states with warrants for his arrest. May their abundance of ego and failure of anything like a religion come to the notice of the IRS, and may they be forced to pay in this world as well as the next. And as for my jaw, You can see that it's just a bit swollen there. And opening it up is not something I enjoy. This whole lower edge just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And you can see I'm talking with about this much of my jaw moving. If I could move just this part of my jaw and not this part, it'd be great. So hopefully the doctors will figure out something. I'm pretty confirmed that there's an infection in the jaw bone itself. Again. So peace be unto all who listen, all who read, and all who join us every day. Blessings be upon you and your family. Peace be unto all who enter here. Peace be upon all of your families and all who you greet or meet in the next weekend. Turning back the time on your clock does not mean turning back the time in your mind.